This is the O-level topic for 2024. I have actually been waiting for this topic for ages, years, and finally it comes out. So it is what it is. I think the good thing about this is that all my students don't have problems coming up with points because it's something very close to our hearts. We interact with social media every day and we are all users of social media. So coming up with points is very easy. But the issue is to weigh this, right? To weigh whether it does more harm than good and how to make it into a cohesive and intelligent response because it has to go beyond just listing the harmful effects and the beneficial effects. There needs to be some weighing, right? Needs to be some criteria to use to weigh this and therefore conclude whether it does more harm than good or vice versa. Okay, before we go into that, right, let's just quickly run through the points that all of us will have. So using my framework of PSE that I introduced to you, P stands for politics, S stands for social, and E for economics. We can use this framework to brainstorm for some points, right? I am going to write beneficial over here and harmful effects over here. Okay, so using the PSE framework, I can start to brainstorm, right? So a social benefit will be that we can connect with friends, family members all throughout the world, right? And if I use politics, I can talk about, I can be updated, right? Updated about the news, updated on the news, right? That is happening around the world. Okay, and then for the harmful effects, if I were to explore economics, it will be definitely the scams, right, that are happening every day. You hear about them every day. And when we talk about social effects, we always talk about how social media is very addictive and will cause people to neglect their studies. Now we come to the proper development of the points, yeah. And for the first point, it says that social media greatly enhances global communication by allowing people to connect and interact instantly across distances. Okay, the second point, social media serves as a powerful platform for spreading information and increasing global awareness on various issues. This is because it provides instant access to news, trends, and global events. And this helps to raise awareness about social, political, and environmental issues. Definitely, social media, right, also give people a platform to stage and set up movements to assist people or countries in need. The most recent example that I can think of is the youth-led mobilization in Nepal. This happened in September 2025, where the young activists in Nepal leveraged platforms like Instagram and Discord to organize under the banner Youth Against Corruption. So they were obviously unhappy about the wealth inequality in Nepal because the rich youths are getting richer and living a life of privilege, while those who are in the lower middle class and the lower class have high unemployment rates and can't find a job, right? So they mobilize via all these social media platforms, right? And press for political reform. Okay, so this is not really using social media as a platform for humanitarian aid. but more as a platform for collective action, right? That assists a population in need of better governance and accountability. Okay, so you might need to um, reshape, the points, right, in order to fit this example. So this example is very, very similar to the example that I used when I was discussing the O-level topic that came out in 2010, on the internet, causing more harm than benefits. Basically, the situations don't really change, right? People are always fighting against corruption. And at that time, right, in 2010, the example that I used was about Arab Spring. For the Arab Spring, right, it was a pro-democracy uprising across the Arab world in 2010. Okay, so it was sparked by protests in Tunisia and it spread to countries like Egypt, Libya, and Syria. In the same scenario, citizens also use social media to organize demonstrations against corruption, inequality, and authoritarian rule, overthrowing the governments and calling for more democracy. So we focus on the harmful effects right now, and most people can talk about the susceptibility of people being addicted to social media because we all know that social media platforms use complex algorithms designed to maximize user engagement, right? To entice the users and captivate them and not letting them stop scrolling. So algorithms learn what we like and then it shows us more of what we like to watch, creating this feedback loop. So one of the consequence is the deterioration of academic grades. Of course, if for adults, right, it might be the neglect of maybe their family members. Okay, then the second point is the prevalence of cyber scams, right? So we hear in the news every other day about such cyber scams, right? They have fake investment opportunities, online shopping fraud, or scams impersonating government agencies. In fact, just very recently, right, I read about how people, especially Southeast Asia people, right, are lured by fake job offers and they are asked to go to Myanmar or Cambodia or the border towns of Thailand where they are kidnapped and then they are forced to work for a scam center, right, where they do romance scams and fake investment schemes and illegal gambling. So many of these workers, right, when they manage to escape from these scam centers, they will tell the reporters, right, that their passports were taken, they were intimidated or they were abused, and they were not allowed to leave at all, and they were trapped in the scam center. Okay, now that we have done our brainstorming, we are ready to craft an argument on this topic, whether it does more harm than good. I am going to suggest three approaches. Okay, I'm going to start with the easiest one, which is to ask the question in the introduction: does social media do more harm than good? Then we go on to answer the question in our body paragraphs, right? And in the first body paragraph, I have benefit number one. Second body paragraph is benefit number two. And paragraph number three is the harmful effect number one. Okay, so now in the conclusion, obviously we have to weigh, right? And we weigh it using the criteria of affecting the majority versus the minority. And in this case, because the benefits accrue to the majority, whereas the negative effects, right, only affect the minority, we can say that since the majority of people benefit from using social media, compared to the minority who are affected adversely, social media definitely does more good than harm. Now I move on to the more sophisticated approaches where I use the counterpoint rebuttal and I state my stand right at the onset very clearly. And in this approach, right, approach number two, I state that the benefits outweigh the harmful effects. Okay, so since the benefits outweigh the harmful effects, I will have two benefits and then I have one harmful effect. But then I'll go on to rebut the harmful effect. So if you look at the third point, right, I will rebut by saying that the governments are cognizant of these scams, right? And they're working with stakeholders to minimize them, as well as educating the public on scams so that they don't fall into the scammers' traps. So you can see, right, that in this case, the weighing takes the form of having a harmful effect, right? But the harmful effect is minimized through good government policies. What exactly has our government done? Well, they work with banks, right, to freeze accounts and to block suspicious transfers. So often we read in the newspapers that somebody goes to withdraw the money from the bank, and then the bank officer notices that the person didn't have a good reason or acts in a very terrified manner and stops the person from withdrawing the funds and questions the person to find out a little bit more. Okay, and then the bank tellers are all trained to detect scams. Another way is that the government works with Singtel and the telecom companies to block scam calls. In the conclusion, I will say that while there have been significant negative effects of social media, governments have taken a proactive approach to mitigate them, causing the beneficial effects to overwhelm the adverse effects. We move on to approach number 3, and in this approach, the harmful effects outweigh the beneficial effects. Okay, so similarly, I'm going to use the counterpoint rebuttal over here, and you can see that in the third body paragraph, right? The benefit is that it connects family and friends, and the rebuttal is that even though we are updated on their lives, our relationship is rather superficial. So this is a very common issue that we discuss about, right? That social media encourages us to only share highlights of our lives, and we often see polished photographs, achievements, and good moments. And this creates curated identities, right? Where people only see other people's best versions and not their true selves. So as a result, connections often stay surface level based on all these images and popularity rather than real understanding. Also, there is this issue that when we are engaged with people on social media, we tend to neglect the people around us. Often than not, right, when you go out for meals, you will see families seated around the same table, but hardly engaging in conversation, and they will just be on their phones, maybe WhatsApping people or gaming or just checking social media. In this case, right, what we are weighing is the impact, right, of the negative effects versus the positive effects. And it's no doubt, right, that the negative effects have a more harmful and lasting impact on people rather than the beneficial effects. In conclusion, the fact that many countries have introduced policies to control children's use of mobile phones highlights society's concerns about phones in general and social media in particular. We are very much aware about the deleterious effects social media can have on our lives.